So the big question is this: how are commercial real estate brokers like us, who didn't take on debt to start their own brokerage, who are stuck in the hamster wheel of day-to-day selling, how do we sell real estate and build our businesses in a way that lets us develop rockstar teammates and create enough leverage to back away from day-to-day selling? How do we get our services, ideas, and insights out into the world and yet still create passive wealth? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swartz, and welcome to the Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets Podcast. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit your business or real estate. I'm your host, Brett Swartz, and each episode I'm joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and sometimes commercial real estate brokers in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together you can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He is a commercial real estate broker. He's also an owner, and he also helps to find off-market deals. In fact, he has completed multiple joint venture projects, equity partnerships, and works in many capacities for his clients. He's out of the Midwest. He's actually known as Mr. Kansas City. He's completed over 120 transactions in less than a year, and he's found a reliable process he uses to network to create a win-win scenario for all parties involved. So if you're looking for off-market properties, you're in a 1031 exchange, and especially if you want to get out of California or highly appreciated tax states and looking for some good cash flow, you want to connect with our next guest. His name is Logan Freeman. Hey, Logan, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Brett. Just like I mentioned before, I'm energized, thriving, and focused today.
Beautiful. Absolutely love that. Would you give our listeners a little bit more about your background and your current focus?
Yes. And Brett, you've got me on a very special day today, because 7 years ago today, I lost my father to drugs and alcohol addiction. And that's real. I say that because it's a real important factor to understand who I am as an individual. I grew up in a Midwestern town, and it's the capital of Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri. And I grew up watching my mom make a lot of sacrifices for us kids to give us a better life. And what my mom taught me was to really value the dollars that you work for. So I started working when I was 13, 14 years old. And my mom's like, I don't think you can get a job. Well, I'm a pretty persistent, hard-headed guy. And I said, I think I can find a job. So I found a catering business right down the street from my house that they said, we'll hire you if you go get a letter from your school saying that, you can keep your grades up. And so I started sweeping floors. I started doing dishes. I started baling hay, and I started to make some money. And by when I was 15 years old, I was a Dave Ramsey guy at the time. And I started a Roth IRA, and I had to have my mom co-sign on that Roth IRA. So it's funny because I don't necessarily invest in the stock market as much as I used to, but that whole principle of valuing what you work for and investing your time and your dollars was really important and ingrained in me as a young buck. And, I was an athlete my whole life. I found refuge. I found my identity as an athlete growing up, playing basketball and football. And when I went to high school, I was a big guy, so I started to lift some weights and turned out to be a pretty decent football player. And throughout high school, had a pretty good career. Played at a Division II school near Kansas City, Missouri, the University of Central Missouri. And after my fifth year, because you get redshirted at these colleges, I actually got a medical red shirt because I broke my ankle the first year after playing in some games. But I got to come back, and some scouts started showing up, and I asked my coaches. I said, I'm really interested in who the Carolina Panthers here to see today, and they said, well, they're actually here to see you. And so it just never dawned on me that I had the opportunity to play at that next level. So after I finished up my career in college, I got picked up as an undrafted free agent with the Oakland Raiders, and I was there for a very brief period of time, not very long at all, but I did beat out some guys and sent some guys home that were drafted. So that's my own claim to fame. And when I was cut, I had a big decision to make in my life, and I decided to not pursue football anymore. And I tell this story that I had to eat about 10,000 calories a day to keep my weight up. It doesn't feel like I would have to do that anymore to keep my weight up. But back in the day, I did. That's what my metabolism was. I stopped eating that, and I dropped about 40 pounds in 4 weeks. So I went from 335 to about 285 pounds really, really quickly. And when I did that, the San Francisco 49ers called and they said, hey, Logan, we want to fly you out. Our center just went down and you were on our board to give a call. Are you in shape? I said, well, I'm in great shape. So, well, what do you weigh? And I kind of hesitated, but then I told him. And when I told him, that was a big light bulb moment for me that I was no longer an athlete and I needed to find my new identity. So I went back to school and I finished my master's program. I got a full-time job. I started waking up at 3 a.m. and reading and going to the gym. I shed 100 pounds in less than 6 months. I had a full-time job that I was driving to an hour and from to get to, making 265 cold calls a day. And I would go to school for 4 or 5 hours at night and spend 12 hours in the library on Saturday. I did that for 6 months. In that 6 months, I really shifted who I was and what I could achieve. And when I was moving out of my dorm, or sorry, my apartment in college, I had my father come up and help me move out of my apartment. And try to say this without getting teary-eyed, especially today, but he couldn't make it up the stairs. And my dad's a 6'3", 265-pound strapping Native American guy, grew up on a farm, 13 brothers and sisters, and I never saw him have any issues, walking up the stairs. So I knew something wasn't right. In less than 2 weeks, or about maybe 2.5 weeks later, my father passed away from a stroke with complications to overdosing of drugs and alcohol, and it was just a really terrible situation. But the whole this whole scenario of events, being cut from the NFL, losing 100 pounds, watching my father pass away from choices that he made, has really influenced me in who I am today. So that's kind of a little bit of my background, Brett.
Well, it's an amazing story, and I'm sorry about your father's passing, and I appreciate you sharing that part of your life and helping our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. By the way, I have some Native American heritage, part Cherokee,
Okay,
so that's,
I can tell.
Oh, Oklahoma. Okay, good. Yeah, I like that. You know what I mean? I like to claim that. I tell my wife we have 5 kids, and I said I tease her. I said us 6 are the original, Native Americans, right? And then she's she's not. And so, anyways, that's kind of the connection there. But I appreciate you sharing that, and that's powerful with the NFL and the pivoting, right? And I also identify too with having your identity in sports, right? And having and it's a big part. I played football in high school, played basketball in college. Small NEI school, definitely not as high level of the NFL, right? But that's incredible that you can take that and pivot and use those disciplines. And maybe we can talk about that here at the end of the show. Before we go there, I want to take one other step back, okay? And I want to help our listeners get to know you even a little bit more. And it goes like this. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life. I believe they're God-given gifts. I believe these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. Some people call them strengths. Some people call them superpowers. So I'm curious, Logan, what's the one, gift or 2 gifts that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you bless and help people today?
Yeah. I'm a natural born leader, Brett, and I didn't realize this until, being a very young captain of the football team in college. And the reason being is I don't care what other people think. And what I mean by that, obviously I understand what other people are saying, but I have a very strong moral, ethical compass that is rooted in my Catholic background. As you can see, right there, the Pope right there. And so I filter decisions very quickly based on some virtues that I focus on a regular basis. And from a young age, my father always told me that, Logan, you can do whatever you want to do, but you have to set your mind to it. And I didn't know what that meant until I started to set goals and work to achieve them. But having the ability to focus on one thing and let all of the other noise, no matter what anybody else is saying or anything else is going on, and just stay focused, determined, disciplined, and intentional is my superpower. Brett, did I lose you?
Okay, I'm back. Hey, sorry about that. We had technical difficulties. I did catch all of that, Logan, and your focus and on the one thing, right? Staying disciplined, staying determined, and just kind of letting the noise get out, not get in the way. has been able to help you succeed. Love that. So now let's to some secrets of helping people find off-market properties and the services that you provide for people
Sure.
preserving more wealth with real estate investing. By the way, I'm a multifamily broker myself, so we also have that. We have a lot in common here.
Yeah.
And so I love that. So talk about what's the best way that you found, maybe the top ways that you found to find off-market properties, and how does that help your clients that you're serving today?
You bet. So, it's my job as an investor myself to obviously find and build relationships with property owners in my city. And I've done a lot of thinking about this, Brett, and there's not really one technique that I implement that brings off-market deals. However, it is a proven system that if you continue to work it, it will continue to produce leads. And that system includes having best-in-class relationships with multiple vendors across every single piece of a transaction. So you being a broker, obviously you understand there needs to be construction, so contractors, property managers, lenders, you have other brokers. There's direct property owners that I'm always networking with. It's being active with nonprofits. It's being active in the city. It's going to events. There's, CCIM, the Urban Land Institute, all of these things compounded with the ability for me to just tell folks what I do in a really clear, concise, and compelling way where they can understand it starts to be a magnet. And so I've got this magnetic system kind of put in place in my market. And I get asked a lot, why don't you go outside of Kansas City? One, I don't need to yet. And two, I can't replicate what I am doing and getting the deal flow that I have here in another market without another Logan in that market. So really it's a comprehensive approach that we take. And it's not one person, right? We have a full service brokerage that are always calling on targeted property owners, but we also have a property management company that we have relationships with property owners. And then I started to identify, what are the type of properties in Kansas City that my clients and ourselves looking to purchase. And after I got granular with that, I dialed it down to 627 properties, 67,500 units. Well, I know Kansas City last year, 2020, the numbers were down just a little bit, but 8,000 units were traded here in Kansas City. So let me take a look at who owns those. Let me try to build some relationships with those people. And so I try to take it from a holistic approach, but then break it down into kind of a typical brokerage relationship with these property owners, and making sure that our message is out there, not only to the multitude, but has magnitude behind it. So reputation and referrals are extremely important in this business and in Kansas City, because we are just not that big of a city here.
Beautiful, love that. But you're big on Super Bowls, baby. You got your
That's
first
right.
one. Let me talk about that here in a minute. But by the way, you can learn more about Logan Freeman at livefreeinvestments.com. Livefreeinvestments.com. So okay, so let me make sure I gather that. So relationships, right? So relationship game. You're connected with the lenders. You're connected with CCIM, Urban Land Institute. You're connected with, of course, other brokers, right? You're going direct to owners. You are building relationships, right? And as a part of that, you're also solving problems and you're delivering results, which enables you to build even more relationships because people want to come back to you for repeat business. So that being said, talk about just the dynamic of, and I'm seeing it maybe, and I think you probably are too, folks leaving highly appreciated states such as maybe like a New York, perhaps a California, right? And looking to relocate their wealth via a 1031 exchange into places like Kansas City.
Right.
I think the secret's kind of already out. I mean, the Texases, the Kansas Cities, the Nashville, Tennessees. But even so, walk us through just the opportunity for Kansas City.
Yeah. I look at this in two ways. First, is a larger macroeconomic approach. I was studying price to earnings ratios the other day, and I realized that the S&P 500 is above 32. Well, last year at this time, or maybe it was 24 months ago, or the average of the last 5 years, price to earnings ratio of the S&P 500 was half of that, right around 16. So I think people are really starting to look, okay, all of my wealth, so to speak, is tied up in equities markets. And if I have the ability to understand the equities markets a little bit, everything that's going on in our economy, maybe it doesn't make sense that all of these stocks continue to rise. And maybe there is an opportunity to watch a downslide coming here at some point. Who knows? I'm not trying to pull the crystal ball out. However, I do think that people are starting to realize maybe I need to look at other asset classes, and one of those being commercial real estate. So that's made the opportunity to have a conversation with a lot more folks these days. It seems like that it's not falling on such deaf ears. And then it becomes, okay, well, what access do I have and what markets do I want to focus on? And Kansas City specifically has done very well during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's continuing to do very well. PricewaterhouseCoopers just came out with a report, their trends in multifamily in 2021. And in that report, Kansas City was labeled as a backbone market, meaning no matter what's going on from a national landscape, Kansas City is very insulated, which can be much more conservative, and it can be safer for wealth preservation, which I think a lot of people are really thinking about right now. It's never going to be a huge appreciation market, but we have strong population growth, strong job growth, and great affordability. Those three, ingredients create a nice recipe for investing. And so I think that that's the piece from a market standpoint. Brad, do you want to touch on anything in there before I continue?
No, I think that's really well said. I like the backbone market, and it's done well during COVID-19, and I think that's part of its job growth, and part of its strong demographics, and part of it's an influx of people coming in. Right, all of that creates a good opportunity. For me, I love multifamily. I love senior housing, assisted living, and I love mobile home parks. Okay, so I actually kind of want to narrow it down now because commercial real estate can be pretty broad.
Sure.
Right, and so can we maybe touch on one, two, or three of those as in Kansas City and what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, an interesting conversation that I had recently on a podcast with a gentleman who focuses only on office product. And, I think everybody has said, man, I bet office is really, really struggling. Yeah, maybe in very specific areas, but there's an opportunity, I think, for a lot of people to look at different asset classes while everybody's flocking to one, which seems to be multifamily and self-storage, those two. With that being said, Midwesterners here in Kansas City act a little differently than some people do on the coast. So you really need to look at not only the demographics of your market and your asset class, but you have to look at the psychographic piece of them. So how are they behaving? Are businesses back in the office? And if you come to Kansas City, they are. And a lot of folks I hear actually counterintuitively is, man, I'm ready to get out of the house. Sure, it was cool. Like the flexibility working from home was nice, but I have 3 kids. I have 4 kids. I got 2 kids. I don't have an office. I miss people. I miss seeing collaboration. My wife is a prime example. She works at a marketing and advertising agency firm here, and they have done a great job during COVID, but I can tell that they're working a lot with their people on social anxiety and things like this because they're just missing. We have to remember that we're social animals. So looking at who your end user is in an asset class is so important. In Kansas City, it's unique because we are still continually seeing new multifamily properties being delivered and being struck for new development. And so I look at multifamily as core plus, value add, and opportunistic. And each one of those sub asset classes in multifamily presents a unique opportunity. If you're developing core plus or core plus assets, really just on the core side of things, fantastic. You're probably a developer and you have a different outlook and it's a shorter term hold for you. But most of my investors and clients are looking for strong cash flow day one. So we really focus on value add and opportunistic deals. And in Kansas City, the affordability matrix is very, very still conducive for investment from outside firms. So when I talk to somebody, one thing I always start with, Brett, is ROE, return on equity. And people don't really understand what that calculation is. It's just simply, let me break it down. If you had a single family home that you lived in at one time, you moved out, let's just say the mortgage is $3,500, okay? You might get $4,000 for rent at that single family home that you own. After management, if you have management, after fixing something, after any of the other expenses that you might have, you might cash flow $150 to $250, right? Well, take that, multiply that by 12, divide that by your equity, and now you have your return on equity. Whenever I tell somebody that calculation, they're like, well, what else can I do? I said, well, you use that money that you can go either invest in a tenancy in common, a DST, or you can use it as a down payment on a cash flowing asset at a cap rate from 6 to 9% in Kansas City. And we break that down even more. And I show them that, okay, if you use this 75% leveraged product with your 25% down payment, you might be able to get into 20 doors. So you have 20 people now paying you on a monthly basis instead of one tenant. And that just blows people's minds because they don't understand that calculation of ROE and where they can move that money to. So that's where I really try to start the educational process at.
Beautiful. I love the way you say that. And you're absolutely right. That is one of the most used and utilized and understood part of the calculation. I always loved cash on cash return,
Yep.
and then immediately return on your equity, right? Because you could be sitting on just this huge amount of appreciation, especially we just did a primary home sale in Palo Alto, an $8.3 million primary home sale, wildly appreciated. He's living in the house and he's looking for some additional income. They're like, well, you can sell it. He goes, yeah, but I have all this capital gains tax. Well, no, not with the deferred sales trust. We can defer it, move it in there. Now, all of a sudden, you have a pile of money that you can go and diversify and go into commercial real estate syndications passively. Actively, right? So you're taking an illiquid asset that it was producing zero cash flow. And especially if we go Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, your primary home is not an investment, people. It's a liability, right? An investment's going to produce cash flow. It's going to pay you, right? It's going to pay and it's going to appreciate. So it's kind of another topic, but let's talk about capital gains tax deferral challenges. The 1031 exchange is very well known from our listeners, but maybe I know we before the show we touched on a story, and I think maybe it's good to maybe share our listeners with that story. The biggest frustration you've seen, maybe a client or a partner, when it comes to completing 1031 exchanges.
Yeah, Brett, it's just being proactive instead of being reactive. And everybody's like, well, 45 days is a long time. Well, they've obviously never done a commercial real estate transaction because 45 days, it feels like a blink, right? I mean, you blink and 45 days is over. But what I mean by that is, if you are thinking about, selling a property and you have capital gains tax, before you even list the property, start educating yourself and start building relationships with people like Brett and myself that can help you place that capital into a cash flowing asset. You're going to need to build a team. There's an educational curve that you have to get over. After you get over that, which you can do in multiple ways, listen to this podcast would be a great way. The second way you can do is start reaching out to people in the markets that you have identified. So, that's the biggest piece of it is making sure that you understand that this is a relationship business, and most of the projects and deals that get done, you are not going to find on CoStar. Well, it would be LoopNet for the clients that we work with. You're not going to find on the internet. So you need to reach out proactively, build a team of people who can bring you deals. They can manage those deals. They can finance those deals, and they can rehab those deals. So, I think that the story I was alluding to was, we had a client. It was a decent sized 1031 exchange. We were trading into an apartment complex, or she wanted to trade into an apartment complex. I said, okay, well, when did you sell the property? So she said, well, it closed 2 weeks ago. So, well, holy cow. Now I only have 24 days to really, or 28 days to really get you into a new property. And so being able to communicate that up front so you have the best team in place so you can start underwriting and making offers on properties before your deal closes is the number one tip that I have for folks that are thinking about doing a 1031 exchange. And in that story, I had to really drop just about everything I was doing from a brokerage and acquisition standpoint to make sure that this person was not going to be liable to pay for that tax because they did not qualify for that COVID extension that came out last year. So to me, it was an unfortunate event. We made it work, but there was stress on all parties that didn't necessarily need to happen because we all know that lenders were a little bit goofy during COVID. There was a lot less lenders that were willing to really step up to the plate on a lot of the projects that we were looking at.
Yeah, very well said. And for our listeners who are wondering and learning about the Deferred Sales Trust for the first time, you can actually save a failed 1031 now, past your 45 identification period, and not having to use it as one of your three properties that you're identifying. So there's a ton of flexibility. In fact, we just did a deal in Georgia, a $7.6 million multifamily sale. Gentleman bought and sold properties for 30 years. He was faced with this COVID dilemma. He had
Mhm.
sold his money sitting at the QI. COVID hits, and like a lot of folks didn't want to buy and maybe still don't want to buy given the high prices and low inventory. And so we
Sure.
saved his failed 1031. He moved the funds, paid off all of his debt into the Deferred Sales Trust. And then he actually, it's been invested now on some multifamily passive deals in Florida and another one in Arizona now. And so he's diversifying. He's feeling really good. He's a baby boomer, right? He's ready to kind of relax a little
You
bit,
bet.
at least until the market shifts. And then if it shifts, he can go back in actively again, which is pretty neat. All tax deferred. That being said, we are running out of time. Logan, are you ready for the lightning round?
I was born ready, Brett.
All right, here we go. So knowing what you know now, if you go back to your 25-year-old self, Logan, what's the one golden nugget that you would make sure you would do?
It would just be to know who you are and stay true to it. I got really caught up with my physical being back in that time period, right? It was like one asset or a part of my life was fantastic, but everything else underneath that was really kind of broken. And so, for me, it was going back. If I could go back to my 25-year-old self, I'd really say, look, it's great to be healthy, but don't make that your life. Make your emotional, mental, and spiritual health a primary objective for you, and the physical will continue to follow.
Beautiful. Absolutely love it. I heard a quote, learn to work harder on yourself, and yourself
Mm,
being, your faith, your family, your fitness, your finances, right? Your personal development, your leadership than you do on your job being maybe just education or, making it to the NFL or getting
yep.
that promotion, right? The intangible stuff, but it's really the internal stuff that's going to make all the difference in the things that are also spiritual as well. So love that. Next question. If you could recommend one book, to our listeners that you're loving today, what is that one book?
For me, it has to be right now 80/20 sales and marketing. And many folks are in sales and marketing and they don't even realize it. But this book is a complete perspective shift on how you spend your time. And so I have been going really deep in eponymous laws, just laws that are named by about somebody else. So think about Pareto's principle, Parkinson's law, Newton's laws of motion. These are things that have stood the test of time, that have been proven to work. And so Pareto's principle, that book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, is completely changing the way that I approach my business and what I focus on in that business.
Beautiful. 80/20 sales and marketing, Perry Marshall. Next question, your favorite leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
It has to be from the one, the only, and I'm going to try to make the meme here. Zig Ziglar. Every picture you see, Zig is always pointing at the camera, but it's if you help enough other people achieve what they want in life, you will ultimately achieve what you want. And I knew that in my head, and I didn't really start to live that out until 3 or 4 years ago when I was just giving, and it started to come back to me. I didn't know when, but it would start to pop off. And if you treat people right that way and help them, it's ultimately going to come back to you. So that has to be the favorite quote from a leadership standpoint that I can remember.
Beautiful. I love me some Zig. What's the biggest project that you're working on right now, and how do you envision that making an impact for others?
Biggest project that I'm working on is with a nonprofit here in Kansas City that I sit on the board of directors, and it's called Restart. Our mission is to help end homelessness here in Kansas City and provide the services that people need to get back on their feet. But before that, we're trying to be proactive and help people not even get on the street. So I have been engrossing myself with understanding how the system works, how to provide affordable housing. I've continued to purchase properties myself and renovate them to a level where we can master lease back to nonprofits here in Kansas City for the homeless.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I actually had an uncle in high school. He was homeless,
Yep.
and my mom and grandma brought him in, and it
That's
changed his
incredible.
life. It changed our life, and he was for 10 years, but it was tough. It wasn't easy. He was,
Sure.
addicted to drugs,
Yep.
and alcoholic, and it took the family like just tender loving care. and sometimes like, whoa, what's happening here? But
bet.
God transformed his life. He's clean and sober.
Mm,
He's working. He actually got his Class A trucker's license,
amazing.
and he's really handy, an amazing guy. And we didn't know it at the time. He was kind of this. We were like kind of afraid of him because he was very different at the time. It was hard to
Sure.
bring him in as a young kid. But that's really powerful. So I appreciate you sharing that you're helping the homeless, and
You
it's going
bet.
to take folks like yourself and families being willing to bring people in to make a difference. And that's my story, at least. So that being said, last question. Actually, second to last question. Here's
Okay.
one. What are you curious about right now for 2021?
I am curious on this online marketing, and what I mean by that is I spent a lot of time in 2020 just putting content out, connecting with people, and so I'm really curious on how to get actually targeted and rifled in instead of shotgunning so much, right? For example, multiple 4 or 5 people have said you've got to get on Clubhouse. You have to get on this new social networking app. Well, I researched it. I got an invite. I got on. I realized that you have to be present at any given time to utilize that app. Pretty cool. However, it doesn't work for me necessarily right now. I'm not blocking time out to be on a social media network. So for me, last year, I probably would have stopped what I was doing and tried to do that. I have a plan. I know what's going to work because I've been reading and researching and building and testing. And I'm really curious about how to continually message the right way that gets people to kind of move from where they are to where they want to go.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And by the way, I've got Clubhouse too. It's like it just keeps kind of popping.
Yep.
And I got some invite thing. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So
Nope.
that's really
Right.
interesting you bring that up. Last question, and then we'll wrap it up. So after all your success, making it to the NFL, pivoting, changing your
Yep.
body, changing your focus, commercial real estate broker, helping in homeless causes, all of these things that you're doing. By the way, you're also the podcast host. We might as well plug that as well. The podcast is what, Logan? What's your podcast name?
Yeah, so it's the Live Free Investors podcast, where I'm bringing folks on like yourself to speak about different things that are happening in the economy, but also in the commercial real estate industry. And I just launched a new podcast called Compression. And Compression's whole goal is to help people create goals and actually achieve them through habit stacking and this eponymous law. So it's this journey to completing $100 million in real estate this year in Kansas City, which is it's the amount of real estate that I've done the last 3 years. I want to do that this year without working harder. And so it's been received really, really well. And I'm really excited about that. But that's called the Compression podcast as well.
Amazing. So after all of that, how do you stay centered, Logan, in your values?
Yep.
And how do you stay encouraged to reach for new heights?
It all goes back to my faith, and you've mentioned faith multiple times, but it's funny. I had a mentor that said, Logan, look at your life like a stool. A stool has 4 legs usually, sometimes 3, but you're a big guy, so you need 4. And he mentioned the fact that they need to be on every area of your life. So for me, boiling it down to my faith, my family, my fitness, and my future. And so I really focus on those on a regular basis. So I'm an early riser. I get up at about 3 to 3:30 in the morning every single day. And I spend a lot of time praying in solitude, reading the scriptures and reading about virtues. And then I start to work on the other parts of my life as well. So my morning routine, which is I'm coining as the Renaissance time, which I'm stealing from Perry Marshall, but it gives me the juice, the energy, the intention, the discipline that I need to go win the day every single day.
Beautiful. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, Logan, what's the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn is a fantastic place. You can find me. I'm very active there, but livefreeinvestments.com is a great place to reach out to me and connect.
Beautiful. Well, Logan, I want to thank you for being on the show. offering, giving us so much value, sharing a part of your story,
Yep.
and sharing how you help your clients, friends, and partners create and preserve more wealth in investment real estate, especially off-market properties. And I also want to encourage you to keep doing that. Keep using the gifts you've been given to be a blessing for others. And again, you can find Logan at livefreeinvestments.com, or also find him on LinkedIn. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, or finding someone like Logan to buy off-market properties in Kansas City is the best way for you to grow your wealth. Please rate, review, subscribe. We show appreciate you. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about the Deferred Sales Trust and how it can save a failed 1031 exchange or be an alternative to a 1031 exchange. And we thank you and appreciate you listening to the show. Take care, everybody. Bye now. You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets Podcast with Brett Swartz. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it valuable. Visit expertcresecrets.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. That's expertcresecrets.com. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.